Hey guys, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Polson and special guest Joe Merrick, webmaster of Serebii.net, to discuss the recent trailer for Pokémon Sun and Moon. So let's get started. Well guys, we finally have concrete information on Pokémon Sun and Moon. We've gotten gameplay, we've gotten our starters, we have our Legendaries, although we don't have official names yet, but we have a lot more to work with than that initial trailer goes. So just right off the bat, first impressions of everything. Ash, let's start with you.
I love the new region, the Alola region. Loving the Hawaii influence. I think it looks like it's going to be great to travel around. It just looks like a really beautiful region to kind of explore. I'm loving that. The starter designs, man, I don't know. I'm not feeling this generation, at least in terms of the starters quite yet. I know everyone seems to love Litten. I'm not feeling it. I guess maybe because I'm more of a dog person. I don't really get the appeal of Litten. I think Popplio... normally, water types are my favorite. I'm totally a water type fan. I usually go with the water starter. Not going to do that this time. Popplio's not doing it for me. Looks too much like a circus animal. But Rowlet, adorable. I love the leaf bow tie. You know, it's not necessarily my favorite design ever, but of the three, I'm going to have to say I'm going to go with Rowlet. I'm not really feeling this generation so far in terms of Pokemon designs, but we've only seen 3 officially, so I'm not going to, obviously extrapolate too much from that.
Yeah, I find that a little bit surprising, but Joe, let's get your take first.
Well, I'm really excited. I just love how different it manages to look to X and Y whilst staying very similar. They've managed to really get that, and the Pokemon designs, unlike you, Ash, I'm loving them, but I'm used to there being a massive shift in, the design, ethos of each generation.
Sure.
I mean, I remember when lots of people were like, oh my god, Oshawott, what is that? It's and now everyone loves Oshawott because it's adorable.
Yeah, it's funny how people's opinions shift, but actually I'm a little surprised, Ash, that you're not a fan of the designs, because at least what I saw, at least my circle that I saw on Twitter, everybody loves these designs. Generally, it seems Rowlet is the by far the favorite of the entire set, followed probably by Litten, from what I can tell, and then a lot of people have the most issues with Popplio, even though personally Popplio is my favorite. I don't know. There's something about the seal design, the big nose. I don't know. He looks fun to me, and I don't know. That's who I've been most drawn to as far as the starters.
Well, I think for me, I guess I don't know. I guess I'm kind of easy to please and kind of easy to read. I really like the cute ones. I don't know. I go for the cuter, smaller / mid-sized Pokemon. And Popplio, to me, obviously he's small, and he could be. I don't know. I'm not feeling the cute factor with Popplio, and certainly not Litten. But Rowlet's adorable. So. Yeah, I don't know. I remember it's funny, Joe, how you mentioned Generation 4. Oshawott I never really had a problem with, although I will say the Gen 4 starters are really the only other generation of starters I never really warmed up to that much. I've generally liked all the other starter sets, but I don't know. I'm just not really feeling this one. But it's funny that you say, Derek, that Rowlet is the favorite, because in all the circles I've seen, Litten is far and away the choice. The others don't even get consideration. Litten is considered to be super cool. You know, he's an emo-looking cat who uses fire. I mean, people seem to love that, which, I don't know. I'm not really feeling that. But
really? What have you seen, Joe?
I've mostly seen a lot of Rowlet love.
I'm not going to the right places then.
Clearly not.
Yeah. But what about otherwise, beyond the starters, Joe? What do you think of Generation 7 so far? I mean, we talked a little bit about the setting, but Alola, it's sort of what we expected. We were kind of off on what specific island they were going to base it on. Honestly, should have known Hawaii, considering how much Japan loves Hawaii. But what do you think of at least the starting island? Because if you've seen my analysis, I have no doubt in my mind this is only one of the islands that we're going to be visiting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hawaii is a set of islands. There is a distinct amount of islands. Plus, I know this is lots of speculation, but in each game, in previous times, there's always been a bit of a hint to the next generation. Like in Pokemon Yellow, it introduced the happiness, and I can't help but shake the feeling that the soaring in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is something they created for Generation 7, but they wanted to get the people's views, because in the map we've got of the Alola region, you can see that the water's kind of blocked off around the caves, so it makes me think you wouldn't be able to surf between the islands. So other than boats, how can you get there? Flying on a Pokemon. It's like, it just clicks for me, and if that doesn't happen, I'm going to be so disappointed.
And soaring actually makes a lot of sense because, I mean, as soon as you hear like a Hawaii region, oh boy, there's going to be a lot of surfing, which God knows, IGN hates their water.
Yeah, too much water.
Exactly. So soaring would actually be a nice solution to that sort of thing. It's like, so eventually you don't have to, fly all that, and you can still explore and visit all these smaller islands and sort of expand upon that. I didn't actually consider that idea, and I don't know, I think that'd be a nice compromise.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be a nice thing. Soaring was one of my favourite things about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Yeah, I think you could be onto something there. I could totally see soaring be a thing they kind of, tested in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for the purposes of Sun and Moon. So I could totally see that happening, and I want to reiterate, I'm very excited about this region. Like, I'm not down on Generation 7 just because I'm not crazy about the starters. Like, I'm still pretty excited, and I'm really, really into this region over the overall design of it and idea of it.
Absolutely. It just has a nice, I don't know, there's something very relaxing about a tropical theme to me. I always find myself put at ease. And seeing that combined with Pokemon, it's really interesting. Now, one of the things I found very odd, though, was I didn't see any tall grass anywhere in this trailer, or either trailer really, for Japan or North America.
Interesting. Yeah, you don't really, do you?
No, I'm trying to think there's anything like that we have not seen grass up to that point, unless they're just cleverly hiding it for some reason. I don't know. What do you guys think about maybe the lack of grass for now?
I mean, yeah, that's an interesting thought. I mean, what if they actually did just switch entirely to random encounters without, the need for grass? I don't know if people would like that.
Probably
that
not.
would be a bit annoying.
Yeah.
That's what you get in caves, and you just end up being attacked by Zubat until you want to just slam the 3DS against a wall.
Yeah.
So it could just be something like early on in the game you get your Pokemon, but maybe like you notice there's a forest behind what may be the starting town.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
The other, speaking of the routes, one of the other things I noticed was how the terrain seems to be much different this time around. Like, we saw like varying, different geometry. Like, it wasn't just a flat piece of land you're walking on all the time. There's hills, there's even bumps along the way, and different, heights for different things. And then the map itself, there's so many different roads going to so many different places. It seems like a complex network rather than the more typical point A to point B type progression that Pokemon usually has. Do you guys really think that we'll have a more explorable map this time around, where there's a little bit more freedom, or is it just sort of like an illusion that the map provides?
It's hard to say. I mean, they don't seem to be a fan of switching things up they switch things up from generation to generation, but they're very often don't seem to be like wide sweeping changes like that. So I'm not sure. I feel like there are going to be major changes made to the overall progression and layout of the game, though I would welcome them if that did happen.
I don't think they'll change the progression, but something I did notice, a lot of people had complaints about X and Y and Oras being like grid based despite being 3D, but here, like you said, there's the different geometry. There's like the cliff sides are curved even in the gameplay rather than being like right angles, and that is basically making the game seem to me to be what people have been wanting for a 3D Pokemon game. And if they can continue that with the lush areas which are based on Hawaii, I think we're going to get a very beautiful game.
Yeah, I'm really getting the sense of that. Well, I've liked every area that we've seen. There's a lot of just details all around. Even in the city, I felt like there's a lot of extra buildings in what I believe to be in the Honolulu analog. And you got this huge dock, you got all these giant buildings, and it's it's so different from some of the usual early cities you get to, because I mean I've never been to Hawaii, unfortunately, but isn't Honolulu the biggest city on the islands, or am I incorrect there?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I haven't been either. I've been to Tahiti, but not Hawaii, so I don't. Yeah,
I'm not sure. Way to screw up, Ash.
Yeah, right. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, especially since the Pokemon World Championships have been there at least 3 years. I'm pretty sure there's been a lot more, but since the video game part of the World Championships has been in it, I think it's been 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I think it's 3. So hopefully it'll be again, then I'll go, finally.
Yeah, you have all the more reason to go now since it's a region.
Exactly.
You know, well, one thing that I am a little bummed about, just because I think this region's going to be so beautiful to travel through, is the fact that it doesn't seem that Game Freak has done too much to improve the graphics engine. Like, the graphics look great, but I already know that there's going to be no stereoscopic 3D in the overworld. I'm sure there will be in interiors like caves, which is but just like the Generation 6 region, I know I'm already going to wish that I could, roller skate and bike ride and whatever through the Alola region with 3D on, and I already know I can't do it, and it's going to be really sad because it's just such a beautiful looking area.
It would really pop, but I can sort of see why it's a little difficult, but you'd think at least for the new 3DS version they'd at least try to have 3D on all the time, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be doing that.
Oh, I'm sure they won't. No. I mean, Game Freak is a lot of things, but they're not necessarily known for their graphics. So I'm not expecting anything more than what X and Y already look like, which they look great. Even in just 2D, it looked like a nice game. So yeah, I'm not expecting anything crazy new though in terms of visuals.
I think the biggest thing I've seen, and maybe this is sad on my part, but I didn't actually notice it. But people are talking about how they've gone away from the chibi designs of characters to a more, I guess, realistic look, which I thought they did that in Gen 6, so I'm not quite sure what the big
I thought so too.
deal is.
Well, basically in the overworld of Pokemon X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the trainer models and the Pokemon models are a lot different because they try to make it so they could fit more on it, I imagine, because of the 3DS's constraints. But now I think they must have found a way around it, or they're just going to accept that the 3DS is not going to do it that great and the new 3DS will. Plus it also gives a sort of consistency with the trainer designs, because the trainer designs in battle are the same in the overworld. Plus in battle you can actually see the trainer behind the Pokemon now, like you could in Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD, which is a really nice touch, and I've wanted that back in for quite a while.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really great. I did see some people were like, man, really? You have all these models and you still won't let the first Pokemon follow behind me anymore? Or like back in Gold and Silver remakes? A lot of people want that feature to come back.
Yeah, I can understand that, but there are a few issues with that now that it's 3D. With sprites, you could say, artistic choice, there's a great big Wailord next to him, but it's only like a couple of sprites in size. But here, if you've got a Wailord following you in 3D, it's going to take up most of the camera,
Yeah. It's kind of the same problem with people. It's a similar problem to people asking for like Super Mario Maker costumes in every style. It's like, yeah, that would be awesome, but it's one thing when it's only the Mario 1 style. But think about how much work it would be to do almost 200 costumes in more advanced, visual styles. Obviously, even 3D, like New Super Mario Bros. U. So it's a similar thing where it's like, it's easy when you're only talking about sprites with 2-3 frames of animation, but when we're talking about full 3D polygonal models, we have to be realistic about what they can and can't do.
I'm trying to think what else we got. We got the Legendaries. We have our first look at the Sun Pokemon and the Moon Pokemon. They don't have official names, but we do have, of course, those trademark leaks, which labels the Sun Pokemon as Solgaleo and the Moon Pokemon as Lunala. And I'm going to assume those are correct. I didn't want to come down any way in the analysis since that's more, I don't know, professional. But as far as in my own opinion, I think those are likely the actual names.
I'd be very surprised if they're not. I mean, trademarks do crop up like this all the time. I remember back in 2002, we were just scouring the trademark list for Pokemon names.
Now to start that all over again, huh?
Yep.
Oh, gosh. We'll have to keep an eye out. But what do you guys think of the Legendaries? Are they appealing to you, or they're not really doing anything? How do you feel about them, I guess?
I'm kind of ambivalent on them, I suppose, so far. I don't dislike them, but I'm not, like, crazy about their designs either. I'm just kind of, like, waiting to see more. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent so far, but that's not really a bad thing. I just kind of am waiting patiently to know more. But again, I go more for, like I said earlier, like the cuter designs than I do like the epic legendaries. So whether I end up liking the legendaries or not doesn't matter. As long as there's a good enough collection of cute, fun-looking Pokemon, I'm fine.
I like them. The Pokemon Sun Legendary, it's a lion. It looks pretty fearsome. But it's Lunala, if that's its name, which is really, like, it's weird to me. In the design, it's very reminiscent of the Anastar City gym leader, Olympia, and that has raised an eyebrow considerably, especially since Olympia, on her clothing, I think it's on her right shin, has got a, like, moon, a crescent moon symbol, like the Pokemon's head. And it's like, I think there might be something there, but, well, we've got to wait and see for that. But that could be very, very interesting.
That does sound interesting. Now, Anastar City, if I remember correctly, was 6th gen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes they run together for me. So I guess let's jump right into that idea, though, because a lot of people are wondering, do you think we'll be able to return to Kalos in this generation? Because a lot of people have always been asking that ever since Gen 2 to let us return to previous locations, and they've never done it. Do you think it actually could happen there, if only because of that connection and potentially others?
It could. I'm not sure if it will. I mean, there might be some desire to have a big region in, because the Alola region, it's going to be segmented. It's kind of like with Wind Waker. It doesn't quite feel like an interconnected world because they're all separate, different islands. So to have like Alola and Kalos would be quite nice. Plus, there's the whole Zygarde connection.
What's the Zygarde connection, just to clarify?
The fact that it's got multiple forms and a massive backstory which hasn't touched the main games yet, which started off in the anime and has appeared in numerous spin-off titles in TCG.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people assumed that the next game would be Z and not, Sun and Moon. So that would make sense to keep that connection, be able to use all that information that you've gotten out of Zygarde nowadays. But what do you think, Ash? Do you think we'll have a chance to return to Kalos, or do you think they'll just sort of stick to what that we've been used to, where it's just this, just the Alola region?
I mean, I think there's always a chance. I think it comes back to a matter of realism. It's like, it's one thing when we're talking about Pokemon Gold and Silver going back to Gen 1, because these are 4-bit worlds we're talking about. It's it was. To hear Iwata tell it, it was difficult enough for them to, cram that into, the Pokemon Gold and Silver cartridges. But now we're talking about fully 3D regions, with a much, much more advanced graphics engine. So it really just comes down to realism. Is it possible for them to do it? Is it worth it for them to do it, given the time and the manpower they have to expend to do it? Possibly. Can the 3DS cartridges handle that much data? Also possibly. Again, I'm not really as up on the technical side of things, because I'm not a game developer, but it's definitely a matter of limitations and whether it's realistically possible. And I think there's a chance, but I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Okay.
There is also, with having a second region, an issue with balance in the game, because with Pokemon Gold and Silver and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as fun as having the second region in was, it kind of damaged the first region. It made it feel a lot smaller. There was a lot less to do, and the Elite Four weren't even level 50 in those games, and it just made the second region feel empty, the first region feel small. And I don't want that again.
That's weird, huh?
If they could do it so both regions were big and full and vibrant, and there was a story in both, then I would love that, but...
Well, as a sort of compromise, I would love to have, at least in the post-game, an extra story along the same lines of Xenia in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I thought that was an excellent addition to it. It was nice and challenging. They added more to the lore, and I found it very interesting. I really hope they continue to do epilogues like that.
I think so too, because I know a lot of people were disappointed with the lack of post-game content in X and Y, so I think that would be great. And kind of on that point, I'm going to go and say that I hope that Gen 7 kind of takes a cue from Gen 5 in terms of story in general, because I like that Gen 5 actually had a story. I mean, if we're being honest, the first 4 generations and Gen 6, while there's mythology, there isn't really a standalone story that you're following. And Gen 5 felt, I guess, a little more like a traditional JRPG in that there's actually a villain this time. There's actually a story. There's a thing that you're trying to stop. Yeah, there's Team Rocket and the other teams, but, Gen 5 felt different, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. And I would like Gen 7 to return to that kind of more traditional storytelling model. I thought it was very interesting.
It does make a bit of sense. I mean, really, because Gen 5 was the second generation on the Nintendo DS, they didn't have to work on the engine so much.
Sure.
So they could dedicate the time to the story. And if they go along the same pattern, because the engine exists already, and obviously they've touched it up a fair bit, but it could have given them time to work on a fuller narrative in order to, well, basically impress us with a story, hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, what's interesting to me is there seems to be a much greater focus on characters, and the character that is thrust into your face the most during these trailers is Kukui. And I believe I'm pronouncing that right this time. I butchered it, apparently, according to Hawaiians during the analysis, but I believe it's Kukui. And, he's not the professor. That seems to be Hala. And he's sort of like an assistant or unknown. He's sort of like your link to the region of Alola, but we don't know his full role yet. I find him very interesting.
It could go any way. It could end up being a gym leader as postulated. It could end up he could be the leader of the evil team for all we know.
Ooh.
That would be a strange twist.
That's for sure.
Could he be the rival?
That does not seem likely. The shorter kid with the tuft of hair that's very reminiscent of Professor Hollis, at least is my guess, to be the rival. He still could be, because this other kid, I'm just going to refer to him as Hoku based on the kid from the Japanese short. I need to call him something other than just kid. Let's say Hoku. Is a rival, but he's very laid back from what I can tell. He's the one that's late to picking up the Pokemon. Usually even like Barry, who's not exactly a great trainer, but he's always in a rush to get there first and do these things. That's always been sort of the key, is the rival's always been sort of ahead of you. And in this case, it's very much like Shauna, where she's kind of behind. She was behind you most of the time and trying to figure out what she wanted to do. And they just try to make the rivals, I guess, more interesting in 6 by having multiples. And I think they realized, at least I hope they realized, that didn't work out too well. None of the kids themselves were that interesting in 6. So I really hope they do something a little different and interesting with this kid. But we'll see. I mean, the fact that he's so laid back is already so much different than most other rivals.
Yeah.
True. I mean, although I did like the fact that in Gen 6 you kind of had both. I mean, yeah, you had Shauna, who was always a step behind you, but she also had, depending on who you played as, for me, I played as a male trainer, so I also had Serena, who is kind of filled that more traditional rival role of always being a step ahead of you, or at least equal with you, and kind of challenging you along the way. She was more kind of, I feel like, your true rival in that game, or he is if you play as her.
Yeah.
Whereas Shauna just she's another rival, but not necessarily the main one.
Yeah, that's the sense I got as well.
Yeah.
Do you guys think they'll bring a return to that sort of style, or do you think they'll go a little bit more traditional with the rival, or change up in some other way?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was multiple kids again. I don't know. I kind of feel like it might be. I don't have any reason to, I don't have any evidence for that, but it just feels like they might go with that in that direction again.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Only other Pokemon I spotted during this, while making the analysis, was a Meowth, which seems to be the pet of your mother. Do you think that now? Some people have raised the question, was like, well, they just brought here, so it might not guarantee the fact that there are returning Pokemon in this generation, since she brought it with her. But I have a feeling that we're going to see that same sort of wide variety that X and Y brought, and I think was one of its greatest strengths, was just how many different Pokemon you could encounter during the main game. Do you guys think they'll go the Gen 5 route or the Gen 6 route when it comes to Pokemon?
Gen 6, without a doubt. A lot of people did have issues with Gen 5. I mean, Gen 5 was essentially a soft reboot. At least that's how they positioned it initially. It's basically the same feeling as when you played Pokemon Red and Green for the first time. And that did succeed to a degree, but a lot of people were like, I want to use Meowth, I want to use Psyduck, I want to use Muck for some reason. So they could do it, and with the potential for Alola being island-based, you can end up with different ecosystems on each island, and so you could just end up with a massive variety of Pokemon. Whether it will have 3 different regional Pokedexes like Kalos does, I don't think so, but a decent variety would be really nice, and I think that is definitely going to be the way it's going to go.
Yeah, that's my hope at least, because I really did enjoy the way Kalos structured that. I think we've covered most of the topics that were brought up by these trailers, unless there's anything else that you guys can think of.
There's the Magiana thing.
Oh, Magiana?
With the distribution of it, it's got to wonder how are they going to do it. I mean, it's not really been in the trailer, but it's something which I think they're going to have to reveal soon enough, because typically how they do it is send the Pokemon you got from the movies, so in this case Volcanion, and then put it on. And I should be seeing that soon, I hope.
Yeah, that would make sense.
It was the first Sun and Moon Pokemon that we saw.
It is. So that is very interesting that they chose Magiana first. What is Magiana's role in this? Because it doesn't seem to have any connection with the Sun or Moon Pokemon. It just seems to be its own thing at the moment. But then Lucario got its own movie when Gen 4 was coming out, so who knows?
Yeah.
No, that is very interesting to see how they're going to handle the distribution of Magiana, unless because it doesn't seem like it should be supported in X and Y or Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, so it would have to be with Gen 7, and I believe the movie comes out this summer in Japan.
Yeah.
So
it gives me some Manaphy vibes. In fact, a lot of this gives me a lot of Gen 4 vibes.
Really? In what way?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's an island region. Sinnoh is an island. It's like the designs of the legendary Pokemon, they scream more like Dialga and Palkia style designs than Xerneas and Yveltal.
I agree with that.
Hard to explain, really, but that's the feeling I'm getting from it. And Diamond and Pearl, they were slow games. They were fun, but they were slow.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that Sun and Moon, because Diamond and Pearl, to me, they brought my love of the franchise back, because I did waver a bit in Generation 3.
Yeah, it's actually the same for me. I skipped Gen 3 because I think Gen 3, for a lot of people that grew up with Gen 1 and Gen 2, Gen 3 is where you're like, well, I'm growing up, I should really stop playing Pokemon, it's for kids. And then all of a sudden you get older into college and you talk to other people that are into Pokemon, it's like, there's a Gen 4 coming out, I should play that.
It's funny. I'm the opposite of both of you. Gen 4 is where I wavered. I did not like Gen 4 at all. Like you said, Joe, it's very slow, and the battle system felt very chunky and just slow to me, which felt like a huge step back from Emerald, which was so quick and just kind of out of your way. It didn't get in the way ever, and I felt like Diamond and Pearl were always in the way. And Gen 4 I just never really warmed up to, and Emerald I think is probably still my favorite in the franchise. So I'm kind of weirdly reversed from the way you guys feel. But hey, if they're only taking design aesthetics from Gen 4, I'm fine with that. Gen 4 wasn't a total loss for me, I just didn't like how it played, but it looked nice, and I liked the Pokemon designs, or at least a lot of them. So yeah, if they're going for a Gen 4 design aesthetic, even in a partial sense, I'm fine with that, as long as the actual gameplay remains fast and snappy like Gen 6 was. I'm fine with that.
And I think that'll be the case, honestly.
I think so too. Yeah.
I mean, I still, my biggest memory from Gen 4 actually is I believe the trainer battle music. I love the way that gradual build up of the music, and I was like, that still sticks out to me. So yeah, I mean, actually, speaking of which, we only got, I guess, one tune from the thing, I guess the main theme of the Alola region. But what do you guys think of the music so far? Because it does have a slightly different feel to previous Pokemon themes.
Yeah, it's got a bit more of a tropical feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Which, awesome theming.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't going to mention the soundtrack because I feel like that's what I always do when people are like, oh yeah, here he goes, he's going to talk about the soundtrack again. And I figured I wouldn't just because we hadn't heard very much yet. But, I mean, now that you had to bring it up, Derek. Yeah, you know, I like the more tropical vibe, and I'm also just really excited in general to see how Gen 7 soundtrack turns out, because I was a big fan of X and Y soundtrack. I thought it was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really... You know, Pokemon is a series that is known for having pretty solid music all throughout. So I'm definitely, after such a strong showing in Gen 6 in terms of the music, I'm really excited to see where they're going to go with Gen 7.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in for a treat, I have a feeling, because there's a lot of, I don't know, despite the fact that Gen 3 was also very much island-based and kind of tropical, you didn't get that vibe as much, and I really think they're going to have a lot of fun with the music cues in this case, and you know, with the whole idea that each island could have its own ecosystem, you could have its own sort of sound to it as well, which would be really cool.
Yeah,
I mean, Gen 6's soundtrack was very much localized to its region. Like it definitely drew influence from the region itself, and that was something I remember during the Pokemon X and Y roundtable at E3 that year. That was the question I asked Mr. Masuda, which was, you know, talk to me about the soundtrack, and he said it was going to be very much culturally influenced by the Kalos region itself. So I totally see them going that route with Gen 7 as well, and kind of giving us a tropical flavored soundtrack this time.
Yeah, I could totally see that, and I'm all for it. It sounds great. I guess before we close out here, what do you think we have our legendaries. Usually they tie into our main plot anymore, at least the goals of the team. Do you think we're going to have... I for some reason, I have this gut feeling. I don't think I'm right, but I have this feeling like they might go back down the route of Gen 3, where they have two different teams, maybe one that wants Eternal Night and one that wants Eternal Day. And... they have, that's where these two legendaries come in. I could be completely wrong, but I don't know. I can sort of see it happening. But what do you guys think? Do you think they'll tie in that way, or the teams that sort of have a completely different plan that they tie into?
You know, I'm going to go out on a limb, Derek, and agree with you. And I'm going to say that because Sun and Moon, conceptually, are the kinds of things that I feel like you could design two teams around, like one wanting Eternal Day and one wanting Eternal Night. Whereas Pokemon X and Y, it's like, okay, what exactly are you designing them after? If you're creating two opposing teams, the letter X and the letter Y, it's like, thematically that doesn't make as much sense. Same thing with like maybe Diamond and Pearl, I would say.
Yeah.
But Sun and Moon, you have a very, a pretty clear distinction between the two in terms of what they physically represent, and I could see that kind of being, kind of transferred over into a kind of two-team setup where one wants this thing and one wants the other. Then again, I don't think I would have guessed that from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, which turned into, ocean and land. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of hard to say, but I could see them doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely could, especially because in the scenes we've seen of the legendary Pokemon, it's got the sun and the moon on the pillars. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely going to be part of the motif. It's not just the names for the sake of the names.
Yeah, and what I failed to point out was when you confront the Solgaleo, it's daylight out, and when you confront Lunala, it's night out. So even then, there's already differences, and I believe somebody pointed out that the locations of their symbols is switched too. I didn't confirm that myself yet, but I did see somebody point that out, and I didn't pay too much attention at it. That I might be completely off, but there are already differences between the confrontations with these two different Pokemon, which is rather interesting. And I don't know. I think I'd like to see the return of two different teams, and how they interact, and giving a little bit more reason to play both versions.
Yeah, that would definitely be cool. I mean, they did go for the version exclusivity. They decided in Gen 5 to enhance it a bit more than just various version exclusives, because in Gen 5 there are different areas to version exclusives. Like Black Forest, Black City, White Forest, and Opelucid City.
Yeah.
So having two teams, again, would be a great way to do that. And if they want to push that further, I'm all for that, because I have to play both games anyway, and I don't want to get bored.
Yeah, that's a good point, because at a certain point there's only so many differences between the versions.
Yeah.
So I guess as a final point, because I almost completely forgot about this, but it does seem that trainer customization is back. At least guaranteed to have different races, hairstyle, hair colors, that kind of thing, in the opening selection.
Good. That's the way it should be. As long as your trainer isn't ever going to be, his or her own established character, then that's the way it should be. Why not? Why shouldn't you be able to design your trainer to look like you? I mean, that's only a positive thing.
Yeah, I do agree that it's great that it's back. I mean, I understood what Masuda meant and said when he said that it was just a Kalos thing when it didn't appear in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. But I'm very glad that it's back. But I'm also a bit disappointed because in doing so, it has kind of killed the look of the player characters, made them a bit more generic, so to speak.
No, I
that
completely
makes me a
agree
bit
with
sad.
that. Yeah.
Because the character in Sun and Moon, the male one, it could easily look just like Callum if you just put him in the X and Y clothes. That's just a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the biggest issue I see from that, because they don't. Neither of them do. The only thing that makes the female trainer stand out is the chicken hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight out of Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a certain sort of generic element that you kind of take on when you are able to create your own avatar, and that is kind of a shame. But I guess the way I feel is that as much as that sucks, as long as your trainer never has their own character elements, then I'd rather go for that over not including as many skin tones and as many being as diverse as possible.
True. And
yeah, I'm happy that it is in, because the generic look, okay, that's disappointing, but in the end you're going to have loads of combinations. Everyone's trainer is going to look pretty different for the most part. I just hope that they add more customization options for the male characters, because the female character had double X and Y.
Actually, my big hope as far as trainer customization, as far as outfits and whatnot, I really do hope they bring back the outfits of previous trainers. Let me make my character look like Red or Gold or whatever character from the past, because I don't know, that's kind of fun. Or even better,
DLC.
Yeah. Even better. Let me look like Gary or one of the other rivals. That'd be awesome to see that sort of those callbacks to the previous generation, since this is the 20th anniversary. So let's go out and celebrate the history of the series through costumes, and of course original stuff too, because there is that distinct Hawaiian style.
I think the only potential problem you run into there is kind of like we were talking about for a while, like how cool or maybe cool it would be if Splatoon had like Super Mario Sunshine costumed or something like that. And I think the problem is the same here, where if they did that, you would end up just with people, all these Garys, Ashes, and other, rivals just running around. Like there would be no or very few original characters by comparison, because everyone would want to play as Ash and Gary. Or Red and Gary, I should say.
Yeah.
Red and Blue.
To be fair, that could be one way to get around the Ash Greninja issue, because Ash Greninja is known as it's like a synchro evolution in the anime now.
Okay.
We're still not sure what it is. Chances are it's going to be a feature which is in Sun and Moon, because they didn't just invent this for the anime. They can't have done. That would just be bizarre. But if you get like Ash clothes in there, then look, there's Ash Greninja.
There you go.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
One quick question I have for you guys, kind of on a character-related tangent, is, Lunala's great and all, but we already have a moon-themed legendary Pokemon, and that's, of course, Cresselia. And do you think that they're going to feature Cresselia in kind of a special role in the story at all, just because of its obvious moon theme?
They could do, but then they would have to have a counterpart, and the counterpart for Cresselia is Darkrai, and that's also based on the moon, or lack thereof.
Right.
Okay. I mean, my big hope is they have to have at least Solrock and Lunatone in this.
Yeah, but I want
them too.
I want them in the opposite versions, just to screw with people.
Yeah, there we go.
Solrock in Moon, Lunatone in Sun.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, if Darkrai symbolizes the lack of a moon, then I could see Darkrai being, the counterpart to Cresselia in Pokemon Sun, possibly. If they want to go that route.
That doesn't really go with the Sun motif, though.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I can see them sort of more focusing, at least for the main story, on new legendaries, or because there's not going to be just these 2 legendaries, of course. We already have Magiarna. I guarantee there's going to be at least 3 more.
Well, yeah, but most of those would be mythical. I mean, we say there's likely to be a lot of legendary Pokemon, but X and Y only introduced 3 legendaries and 3 mythicals.
Oh, okay. Well, that might be the case then, yeah.
All I want is a 4th evolution of Vanillite that's also a legendary, because, come on, a legendary ice cream Pokemon? That's awesome!
The greatest ice cream cone in the world.
What? You'd never need another legendary.
Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of typing, do you think, for the starters, do you think they're going to get different typings for their final evolutions? Like, it's pretty much guaranteed that Rowlet is going to stay grass flying the entire time. Do you think... I've seen some people say that, like I put out the suggestion that Litten will become Fire Dark. Some people are saying Fire Poison, and I said for Piplio, Water Ice, which is the obvious one, but other people have suggested Water Psychic or Water Fairy. Do you, are any of these like sticking out to you guys as likely, or do you think, or something else, or what do you think about what the final typing might be for the starters?
That's a tricky one. I can see the idea between Popplio being Water Fairy at the end. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking what they might do is similar to the Pokemon X and Y starters, where it ended up being a reverse rock, paper, scissors thing. Mm-hmm. Like Chestnut was grass fighting, Delphox was fire psychic, and Greninja's water dark. But if that happens, then basically, at least as far as I can think, the Litten is only going to end up being firefighting, and nobody's going to want that.
No.
Yeah. I'd be surprised, actually, if Litten didn't end up being Fire Dark, just because of its design. Mm-hmm. Like, that seems like it would have to happen. I mean, of course it doesn't have to, but I could see that totally being a thing. I don't know. I'm not seeing the Water Fairy thing with Popplio as much. I guess I could see maybe where people are coming from with that, but I think Fire Dark for Litten is more likely than a fairy typing for Popplio.
Perhaps.
I think it's fairy type because it's, just joyful. It's kind of like clownish, like Mr. Mime, and that's where people are getting the idea from it.
I think it would be cool. I think having a fairy type, even a dual type, as one of your starters would be pretty neat, actually.
Absolutely. It's a great new typing, and obviously they got to get more representation in there as well. The interesting thing, like, I think the final design for Litten could be very interesting, if only because it has the alchemic symbol for sulfur on its forehead. So I'm like, are we going to get into some sort of alchemy sort of thing, sort of like in the same way that Fennekin gradually became more of a mage as they go on? Because there's some great like knight, mage, and ninja idea behind the starters from X and Y, and some people were suggesting a circus theme for these 3, but I'm not quite seeing it outside of Popplio.
No, I'm not seeing that at all.
But it could be a theme which encompasses circus as one of the 3 elements, so we just need to think of what goes with a circus.
That is a hard question.
Yeah, really.
Oh boy. But, I think I'm out of topics, unless you guys have some, because I think we've picked apart these trailers as much as we could.
The only thing I can think of is just my concern that they might reveal too much before launch.
That is a possibility.
Because with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they revealed every single new Mega Evolution, plus the entire post-game, plus the twist of that post-game where you fought Deoxys. I mean, these are adventure games. This is you going on an adventure, you're exploring, and they kind of ruined the exploration, so...
Which is odd that they did that, because they kept a lot of that secret for X and Y because of the whole Mega Evolution aspect to it. And I guess we could expect more Mega Evolutions in this generation, because that seems to be a staple at this point.
No, without a doubt. Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if it's not in.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm with you, though. I hope they keep a lot of this secret, because that is the big thing with Pokemon, is like seeing the new Pokemon, seeing the evolutions, because I believe they tried to keep the final evolution secret of the starters for X and Y as long as they could. Of course, leaks got out because people want to know their Pokemon, and I don't know. We'll see how that all goes. But I do hope they take more of a secret, of try to keep it as secret as possible, and just slowly get your Pokemon out there.
Me too.
That does bring up a point, though. Do you think they're going to have as many Pokemon as, say, Gen 5 had, which was 156, or do you think they're going to continue being a lower amount now that we're quickly getting towards 1,000 Pokemon? Do you guys think it's going to be like we're going to get 60 or 70 more? Do you think we're going to get over 100?
I think I'm going to say on the lower end, 60, 70, without a doubt. I just feel like, again, because of the complexity of these games relative to the older games, I feel like designing new Pokemon and making their models is more of a burden than it was before. So I think without a doubt, we can expect a number of new Pokemon closer to X and Y than something like Gen 2 or 3 or something.
Definitely not more than 100, but I want to say you went 60 to 70. I'm going to go 80 to 90. I think there's going to be a few more than X and Y. Okay. Maybe to bring it up to... My idea is to bring it up to a little bit more than 800. Since we're at, 720 at this point?
Yeah.
So
721 in X and Y.
Yeah, so I'm predicting like 80 Pokemon. Will get us up to an even 800.
I could see somewhere around there. It doesn't have to be necessarily 60 or 70. They might want to do enough at least to breach 800 and then leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. God, 800 Pokemon. That's crazy.
I know.
Try having to memorize everything about them.
Oy.
I don't know how you do it. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know some, and I can keep track of some of them, but I couldn't tell you everything about every single one. I'm amazed when people do. And then there's those people who's like, how could you not know this? This is so obvious. I'm like,
yeah, it's so obvious. Well, fortunately, the only Pokemon you really need to know about is the Vanillite line. So, thankfully, you don't have to worry about the rest of them.
Oh, gosh. That'd be amazing. All right. Well, I think that covers it for our Pokemon Sun and Moon discussion. So thank you for watching. And if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameExplain. And Joe, where can they find you at?
At Serebii.net.
.net. Serebii doesn't have its own YouTube channel or anything like that, right?
It's just no, don't have a I do have a personal YouTube, but website is where everything happens, really.
Yeah, all the information. Alright, and of course, stay tuned to Game Explained for more on Pokemon and other things gaming too. Until next time, guys, bye.